Hi, Digidina here. I didn't have time to make a proper tutorial as it takes a lot more time to make a proper tutorial because I need to prepare some text and then to look what sequence I need to go to explain everything, and also to cut and paste the video, so I have not too much and stuff inside it. So I apologize for my stuttering and sometimes maybe hard to understand, but let's get started. So one of the things we're gonna need here is this pooler. This is a package you can get on the ecosystem, and it has 4 actions. And the first one I'm going to show you here is the pooler pool, and this is gonna make initially some pools from the blocks I have. So I have here my prefab blocks, and I'm just gonna drop one in here, and let's put this in the center, and let's go to the scene also. So block 1 here is the parent, and there is still now an empty mesh here. It's just to show you this is just a standard cube that I spawned, that I created, and then I dropped everything inside here. So the block that is actually the mesh here, and then I have the sides here that are just also cubes that I resized, as you can see, scale to 0.1, position 0.45, and that should be nicely on the edges, and for the top also. So for each side I have these triggers, and with this I can know which side I am on. So similar to the system you had, but I have them just inside, and in this way they can stay there. They don't need to be erased or everything or anything. And so that is block 1, and then for block 2 I have the same, but then it has a hole in the middle. And also again here, the block, I don't have any tags or layers. On this block I have a layer cube, and on the sides I have a layer side. And the layers are important, so they need to be there, just for the raycast to know that it's hitting these. And so I can take this away, and let's go back to Playmaker. So initially we're pulling these objects here, and let me play this. And the name of the pool, so you can name each pool, and these names you can use to create them. And as you can see, I named them here block 1, and then with this clone on it. And the reason of this is because when they are created here, they all have a clone name on it. So that's why, to make it easy, I just use this complete name, and these are just variables here. So block 1 string, and the value is block 1 clone, and the same here, block 2. And so as you can see here, it made like 20 objects from block 1 and 20 objects from block 2. And sorry. So as you can see here, I have the initially pulled objects to 20, and here also, and can grow. And the maximum is set to 0, so this means it's unlimited. And I think in your case that unlimited is good, so these settings would be okay. Only the initially, maybe you could change. You have to try out yourself and find a sweet spot for that. So after I pulled them, so after I made these pools, I'm gonna set this first item in the middle. For you, you can have your floor there and to start there to spawn something. So I just have air here, so I need one first object here to connect something. So I'm gonna spawn here this block 1 and then on position 0, 0, 0 and rotate this a bit so I can easily put something on the top side and left and right side. Then I use getChild and I'm using this child name block, and on each prefab, the mesh, I call it block. So it doesn't matter how it looks like, but the name should be all the same, because it makes it a lot easier to select that object. And the reason for that I do this is for the colors. And maybe I should play this first so you can see what's going on. But let me finish first here. So I'm getting the child for the block and I'm setting this color to white. So the first block is going to be white. Or let me change this set it to green. So the first block is going to be green. And then I have this array list add, and it's going to add to the lists, but I'm going to explain that later. And that's all things to add. So let me play this first, then you can see how it works and that it works. So if it wants to play, here we go. So I have my first object here and I can select an object here, and I'm gonna show you also in a minute how this works. Then I can left mouse click and then I can connect it somewhere and place it here, and my color is white, so white is gonna go there. When I put green, it's gonna be green ones. When I get this object, it's gonna set this with a hole in the middle, change color, blue. And as you could see, if you go on the edge, you can set also on the behind parts sometimes, and I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me I think it's okay. And then I can save this and I can clear this, and when I load, everything comes back again. And I'm using easy save, so when I stop the game and then I'm gonna start the game again, and when it starts, here we go, and I load again, it's back. And I don't have any rotation here now, but if you would rotate them, they should be also on the same rotation, so that should be fine. Okay, now for the selections, I just have here a set material green and white just for to show the selection on these two. And then I have this set FSM string, and I'm just gonna set this pool object. So I'm gonna set here block 2 for here, and then block 1 for here, this one. So that's just when I create one, it knows which one it should create. Sorry. So if you would have more objects, then there would be block 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until how many you have. So that's the blocks. Let me see. So initial pool we have, and then this pool spawn. So the pool spawn is like creating an object, and so I'm pooling this, and this called block 1 clone, as they're gonna be all in this kind of name with clone behind. So this is just a variable. You could also place this manually inside of it, but I tend to use variables, so I could make a kind of a manager and then set all the objects. If I would need to rename them or something, I could do everything with a manager just with set FSM to this target, and then I could name them. So that's why I tend to use variables instead of direct naming them. Just the same as here for the reference. This is going to be for the array lists, as array lists have names, and I'm going to go to that in a minute. And so here I have my input manager, and when I press my left mouse, I have this mouse pick, and let me just open this. So I have my mouse pick to get to select this object, and then I have this set FSM game object, and the indicator here that's going to be here is going to be triggered. So I mean, let me check this again, sorry. So it's not going to be triggered, but it's going to store this object here. Then with this set FSM game object, I have this every frame, and it's going to set the object here on this indicator. So I have here my left mouse object and my right mouse object. So it's gonna set this object here, and while holding it, that will change. So if I'm holding it and then I'm selecting an object, it depends on what object I have selected while holding my mouse button down, that's gonna change. And then in the indicator, I have this game object changed. So if my game object would change from none to let's say side 1, then it knows that it's going to be side 1 or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so as you can see here, I have this left mouse object, and I'm going to store the name what was connected. So that's going to be side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as you can see, they are named also like this. So important also, the naming from this must be the same on each block. Side 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and also on the same positions. Then let me see, I have this get parent, and yeah, so I have this get parent. So I'm gonna get the parent from this side block, and so I'm gonna get the block 1 or block 2. Then from that block, I'm gonna raycast if nothing is in front of it. So because if you have these two blocks against right next to each other, and you could hit this in between, then it would place a block on the other block if I didn't do this raycast. So this raycast makes sure that there is nothing in between. So that's why the direction here is going to be same as from the set position. So for each side, if it would be on right, then x1, and so it's first gonna do a raycast to look if something is there. So if something is there, it's gonna send this event that left mouse no object. And as you can see, I just have a global here for no object, and then it wouldn't show the indicator. So that's the reason I have this. So I'm raycasting from this parent, so from the cube actually here, so from the empty object, so from the center of this, and I'm raycasting left, right, up, down, or back or front, depending on which side. As you can see here, direction -1, here is in y1, y -1, and in z direction. And the raycast is in space self. That's important, also not in the world space. because if your object would be turned, the side one would be on a different direction. So that's why space self is needed. Okay. So if I raycast and nothing is next to that object, then I'm gonna set the indicator as a parent to this block that I'm selecting. And then I'm setting the position of this. So I have this parent is size 1, 1. So I'm just setting the position here to -1, and that should be right next to the other block. And also again, space self is important here. And then I'm gonna activate the game object as an indicator. Maybe you already have something like this, but or you are just connecting on the same position as on your sides. So this works kind of similar, but just with set position. Okay. Now on the right mouse, I didn't show you yet the right mouse, so that's to delete objects. So let me just play this. And I'm just gonna load this, and then when I use my right mouse button, as you can see, I have another material to make it transparent, and I could make it more advanced to show the same color also, just to make it transparent, but for now I just have it like this. When I right click my mouse and hold and then I release, I can remove objects. And then I can save this and load this, and they would be removed. So that's with the right mouse click. And so what I'm doing here, first I'm going to check if my game object is null, because if I object changed to null or to none, it's also going to send an event, and I don't want anything to happen if nothing is selected. So that's why. And so here I'm getting the child again for the block to change the material, and you would maybe be tended to set this material to the parent, so it's more easy. But believe me, it's better to have an empty space, like an empty block or an empty parent to put things in. So it's easier later on if you need to add some things or remove things. That's it's just better. So also on these, I have also this box collider. And that's why I need also this cube layer, because I want to select so with right click, I'm actually looking for the block here. So for this box collider and not for the sides. Let me show you here. So the input here is for the right. I have again this mouse pick. And as you can see, I have this layer to cube. I forgot also to show you here. I have my layer mask set to side, so just for the sides, but probably you know this already maybe. So on the right mouse click here, mouse pick, sorry. So I'm storing this to the right mouse object. And I'm doing also every frame, and then set FSM game object right mouse object, and I'm setting the value again to this indicator, and then get mouse up, and then let me go first again to the indicator here. So if I have something here, if it's null, it's gonna go back. So no object, it's gonna reset the material, and So here I'm getting the child, the block, and then I'm getting the material. And then let me see. So first I'm getting the material that the item has, and then I'm setting this material to transparent. So if the material would be green, I have this stored here, and then after I stored it, I'm going to set this material to the transparent one, and later on I can set this back. So let me see, but if the last object, so the first time you would use this, the last object would be null. So that's why I have this game object null, and if it's null, I'm just gonna set the last object. So last object gonna be the current object, and then I'm just gonna set this material. I use set FSM material here because there is no action really to set the material on a variable. So, but this works fine. So I'm just setting the material on a variable in this same FSM. I could make a custom action maybe for it later on, but for now this is fine and should be no problem with this. So use owner, FSM name, indicator. So this is the indicator, and then the variable name, last object material, and I'm going to set this current material. So if game object is not null, so it has a last object, then we can go here. Then I'm gonna get the child from the last object. Sorry. And I'm gonna set the material from the last object. So if I would move from this one to this one, this is gonna be the last object, and it has to go back to its original color. And that's what's happening here. Then I'm going to set this last object. So I'm going to set the current object to the last object. And then I'm going to set this current object to 0 or to null. And then also I'm going to set this last object material. Let me see. So yeah, the last object material variable, I'm going to set this currently material, and in this way we can move and see the transparent go to the other ones and make sure that the original color stays when you move out from it. I hope you understand this. It was a bit maybe difficult to explain. So okay, now so I have my mouse pick here, and I'm gonna send it to this to this for the indicator. And here I'm gonna check also if my object is null. If it's null, it's just no object, so it goes back to the listener. And if it's not null, it's gonna check for this object in the array also, but that's going to be for later. So I forgot to show you also here. So when I release the button, that's the time I continue here actually. So as long as I'm holding the button here, or my mouse button, I'm doing the mouse pick, and I'm doing the set FSM game object in every frame until I release my button. So, and then I have let me see. So here I just have an object. So I'm gonna have this array list contains, and that's just to see if it's in the list. Just to create, I'm gonna add to the list, but I'm gonna show you this later. I'm gonna go to the arrays first now and explain you about arrays. So here I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different arrays, and each list is empty at the moment, and it's just like you would list something in a yeah, in notebook or whatever. And important is the position, so the element position, or yeah, the index number. Yeah. So these are the array list proxies, and each array list has a name here. That's the reference, and these references I use here. So for color array, I have this ref color array, and that's just a string, and I can use this in the actions. That's just so I cannot accidentally put a wrong name. You can also, in each action, you can just put the name manually, but it's safer this way. So I have this ref for reference. I also use category for reference, so it's easier to see, and I have them also in the inspector. So that's to see them here, and I can change them here also. And so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different arrays here. And so each array has a list actually in it. So, and they are on position. So how do I explain this? So if I have, let me open this. So now they are pre-filled 0, but I'm gonna add them. And if I would add one object, I would have item 0 or element 0 or index 0. Array lists start from 0, and then, so let's see, if I have 10, I would have 10 items here. Now if I have, let's say if I made a cube and I'm going to save this, or I'm going to place this in the array, so the first time it's going to be on item 0, and then I know on this position is going to be this object, and then I want the position from that object, so I'm going to place on the same index. So index is used for these numbers, so index 0 would be here item 0. Now on the other lists, I know now on item 0 I need to have the position, and I also need to place the rotation. And like for the color, actually this should be a string, but so let me save this just to show you. So item 0 is going to be here the rotation, and here is the position, and here is the color, and I have the object ID, and the object ID is going to be this pool name. And so now I know from this item 0, I know the position, I know the rotation, and I know the color and the ID. Then if I would have a second object created, that's going to be on item 1, and maybe I should play this. So let's make this 0, and this one 0, save, 0, save, 0, save. So they should all be 0, else you would have problems, because if I'm gonna add, even the data inside is nothing inside, it's just gonna add a new one. So let's play this, and I hope you can still follow, because it's not that easy, but once you know how array lists work, it's actually quite easy. So the first thing I did here with the object manager is I spawned the object, and I also placed it in the list. So I have this pooler spawn. So I spawn the object, I store the object here. Then I have this get child to get the block here, so to get the mesh for the color change. Then for some reason it's not green. I'm gonna have to check that why. Then I have this array list add, and here I have my reference, so the object. Let me lock this and then go to arrays. So object, so I'm gonna add this block 1 is here, as you can see, block 1. Then I have my next one, so position, so that is gonna be here. In this position is gonna be 0 0 0, so that's right. And I just did the variables here manually, the same as here for the rotation, so 15, 40, 20. And I know that I did these rotations here because I put them manually for both of them here, the position and the rotation. Sorry. And as you can see here, item 0 is going to be 15, 40, 20. Yeah. Then the color. So the color is still white. I'm not sure why this happens with the first object. I have to check that. I didn't test that before. So, and then the last one here is going to be the object ID. And let me see, object ID is block 1 clone. So let's make a new one here, and as you could see here, it's added here, block 2, and it's showing here block 2 clone, and that's going to be the ID for this. And the color white, let's make a green one. And now we have block 2 and green, and then also the rotations. And then let me look here. So here is my block 1 item, block 2 item, and another block 2 item. So that's for each object here. And then I have the local, not the local, the world positions from them. So if I would save this and clear, so I cleared my lists also, and then load this again from easy save. They are back again. So yeah, it's like you're making multiple lists and then you set them next to each other, and then on each line you can see what things that you need for each list. So okay, let's stop this. So I hope you understood this. If you don't understand the array lists yet, there are some tutorials on the wiki page. I will I will post the link for that. Now, let me see, where was I? Unlock. I'm not sure if I explained the blocks here. So when I select this one or this one, it's just gonna change this this value from block 1 to block 2. So that's for when I create an object, and that's gonna be here in the game manager. So in the input, it just changes this pool object. So now it's block 1. When I press this one, it's gonna change the value to block 2. So if I create, I'm gonna take this from pool block 1, and if it's selected with block 2, it's just gonna spawn from the second pool. And if you have multiple, then on each one that you would select, it would also set this pool for the correct name. Now let's go. So when I create the object, so I'm getting the child here, and that's just to set the material color. So if I would press these colors, that's gonna be similar. So let me show you the color picker here. So what I have here, just simple UI button array. This is on the new Playmaker version. This is still in beta, so but you can just make buttons or whatever for this, or in your game, just to do something similar. So what I'm doing here, when I press white, I'm just activating and deactivating just this background green here. So I just have 4 backgrounds here, and I'm just deactivating the other ones, and then the one I select is active. So that's all. It's just changed this image on the background. But this part is the important one here. So I'm gonna set the FSM material to white, and if I would have green, I'm gonna set this material to green. So I'm gonna set this FSM material on the game manager, and the FSM name is gonna be the input, and the variable name is material, and then green. So let's go to game manager, and then I have my variable here and material. And so this is going to be changed when I changed here, and that's probably the reason that maybe that it stays white, but let me check that later. So when I create my object here, so I'm going to spawn, then get child, so I need to get the block, so I need to get the mesh to change the material and not on the parent. So I'm getting this as a child, and then I'm setting the material on the child with the material that is set here. So that depends on what color I choose. Okay, let me see if I got most of this. So the indicator, we had the indicator and the input, and now color picker we did. I think only color picker is here. Object manager is also only one. Then for block 1 we also had this. Now we can get to the array. I'm not sure if I explained this, but important is the naming here. So block sides and block 1, and also the cube layer block doesn't have any layer now, but you can also give it a layer name or tags, and then the side layer to select which side. And let's go to the array now. And what we have here is to load and save. So let's go first to save. So with adding and removing, did I show you actually this the remove item? No. So once I picked something to remove, I have this game object is null, also to check if null, and then I have this array list contains, and let me play this and just put some things. That's easier to explain, I think. And lock this, and then go to the array. So let's just load what we had here. I'm just gonna add a few things. So now we got some items here, and let's go to the first item. So that's gonna be item 0. And when I right click and then select this, and let me just put a breakpoint here. So I'm gonna right click and select this, and then I'm gonna release. Now what's gonna happen is it's gonna look here. So array list contains, and it's gonna look to this object that I selected. So it's the selection I have now was this block 1 here, and let me go to the variable here, and that is on the right mouse object, block 1. And as you can see, that's the first one we made also, and it's here. So now it found this object in that list, and let me show you here. So this is the game object where the arrays are. So on each array list action, you need to point it to the right object where these components are. So I have my reference for the object, and so this is the reference for the objects that I stored here. And it looked for block 1 clone, and it found block 1 clone, and it found it on the index 0. If it didn't found it, it will say no object, but if it's there, it should be in the list. It's just like a failsafe if ever something would happen. So, and if it's contained, I'm gonna send the event to remove the item. And we know now index 0 is this object. So for the other lists, I know also item 0. So index 0 is also connected with this object. So this is the position from that object also that I am stored, and also the rotation that I'm stored, and also the color. And you can see that this is changed now because I've been updating it, and yeah, it takes different values, but it's the same rotation and position than the -15 stuff that I did. So now I'm gonna remove the item, and so I have for each list, so I have my objects here. So I'm gonna remove this from index 0, and then I have my position I have to remove. Then I also have the rotation that I have to remove, and also the color and the ID. So I need to remove it on each one, else my lists will be something wrong with it, because it will not be the same content anymore, and then we will have issues. So that's important to remove everything. And it doesn't really matter on which position that an object is. When you remove this object, so this one is going to be removed, and you will see that block 2 is going to go up here. So I'm going to play this, and as you can see, block 1 is removed, and all the other ones is moved 1 up, and the same on each other array list. So in this way, it removes the correct line, and that's simply by knowing on which index that block was. We can do another one maybe. So block 2 clone 2, and that should oh, it's a breakpoint now, so that should also remove. And when you add again, it's gonna add again. And that list can go on and on. You can only see a limited amount of 30 in this list while playing, but it should be endless, so that would be fine. Okay, now let's get back here to the arrays to load and save. Sorry. So this is a loop. So a loop is important with an array. So I have a list of multiple objects, and what I'm gonna do is, so first of all, I tend always to use this reset so I'm sure it's gonna start from the beginning. And this is because if a loop would be how you say that, would not be finished, so it would not have done all of them, and then you would go back here and then start again, and you would think that it would start again, but it will just continue. So that's why we have this reset. And so here I'm setting this to true, and then when I go here, the first thing this action is going to do is going to check if reset is true. If it's true, it's going to reset everything, and so it's going to start back from 0 or the index that you have placed here. And after he found that if it's true, it's also going to set this action or this this variable to false. So the next time it come back, it's going to be false. So it knows it's going to have to continue until that you set the bool value again to true. Then when it comes back here again, it resets again. Now let's see. So I have my reference here, the reset, and start index and end index I set to 0. So if it's to 0, it will just iterate until the end. So it will loop until everything in the list has been done. So in some cases you don't want that, but in this case you really want that. So that should be both on 0. Then the loop event is going to be next, and when finished, so the finished going to be when everything is checked. So when the whole list is done, then it's going to set the done event. You can also set a failure event if for some reason you would get failures. I don't use this much actually. Maybe I should, but I don't know. I didn't have problems with that yet. So the first time I'm gonna start with this object, it's gonna get this this game object. So if I have 10 in them, it's gonna start on 0. Let's say 10 here. So it's gonna start with item 0, and I keep the results here in a variable. So I'm gonna get this object, and also I'm going to get the current index number, and then I'm going to go here, and the thing I'm doing here is I'm getting this position from this first cube, and I'm getting the rotation from this cube. In your case it might not be needed, as they can once they are placed they shouldn't be moved, but if they move while putting other things, so let's say if you place an object here and another object could move, then it's better to also update the array. So that's why I have this loop now, but it's possible that you don't need this loop, as when you place them they are there, and maybe just when you rotate them, that you should also update on the right index on the index from that. So this looping maybe is not needed for you, but I will still explain this. So I'm getting the position, I'm getting the rotation, and then I'm getting the child. So I'm getting the mesh, and the reason I get the mesh because I want to know which material is on it. And I cannot save the material. I can set it in an array, but I cannot save it in easy save. So a workaround for this I did is to get the name from the material, and then later on here when I load, so I'm getting also this name, and then I use the string switch to know which name, and then for each color I have a connection here. So the string switch white gonna give me the white material, and then red, green, blue. So that's why I do this in this way, as I cannot really save them. I can save them or store them in the array, but when I stop the game, and I would use the easy save and I want to play the game later again to continue, then the material cannot be saved in this case with the Playmaker array, with the array list. So that's why. Then get name from material, and I also get the name from the current object. So block 1, block 2, and actually it's not going to be block 1 on block 2, but it's going to be this block 1 clone. Then I'm gonna update the array. So I got this from index 0, and then I got the rotations and stuff, everything, and then I'm gonna use array list set, and then I have again the reference here. So I'm gonna set this position and rotation and color and ID for each object, and then after I've set these, I go back here, and then I'm getting the next one. So then I'm starting with item 1, and I do everything the same again. So this is looping, and as the array list set as is using the index, that's why I'm getting also the index here. So the next one would be index 1. So I'm gonna update everything on this index 1 here, also 1 1 1 1, and then when I loop back again, it's going to be index 2. So then it's going to get the info from that object that was on index 2, and then also again set this new values to the correct index. Once that everything is done, and so everything is up to date, then I use this array list easy save. These actions you can also find on the ecosystem. They are not standard included with easy save. Then I have the reference here. So that's the reference for this array. No, the position actually, and rotation, and the objects I'm not saving also. And because objects cannot be saved, but I don't really need to save them also. That's why I have this object IDs. So later if I load, I'm just going to create them from these object IDs. So let's go back here. So what I have here, the position I'm gonna save, and then I have my tag also. Again, I use variables. You can also name them manually, but it's safer to do this, so you can just use the variable in the easy save and also in the load in the other one. Then make sure that the save file is the same, because I believe the standard from the save file on the actions are still different than from the current easy save. Let me see. Array list easy save. Yeah, you see, default ES2 file. And yeah, if this save file is different, then it would save on another file and you wouldn't find it later. So that's why be careful with that you name them the same. For all save and load should be all the same name. You could also use a variable for that if you wish. So I'm saving the position, saving the rotation, saving the color. So the color actually not the material, but the name from the color. So that's just a text file or text variables. And also the object ID is going to be also a string. So not text, string variables. And then after I saved, I can go back to the listener. Clear list is just gonna loop also again here, and the reason I loop here is to remove the objects from the pool. So pooler destroy stored, so each object I got from this list is gonna be destroyed, and when everything is destroyed I just use array list clear on each of these components. And let me see, I have also the reset here, but that one actually is not needed here because I have it here. So this one is fine for each direction. Then array list clear for the position and for all the other ones. Then I have this send event by name, and this is gonna send an event to the object manager and to set this first item back again, because else I have nothing to work with, because I have no floor. So okay, now, so that's for the clear. Then the next is to load, and the first part here is just exactly the same as the clear, and the reason for that is because else it would overlap these objects. So I want to be sure, I want to have an empty space again and then load what I have saved. And so we have the array list easy load, the reference for the position, and then the tag for the position. So that's the unique tag for where it is saved in easy save. Also again, the save file must be correct, so careful with that, because I had some issues with it myself, and then I noticed that the names were different. So I'm loading the position. Let me see. So position, rotation, color, and the object ID. So I'm not loading the game objects because we cannot save them. And now I'm gonna use this position just to get the amount, so the index number for each item actually. Even there is no item yet, but I know these saved positions are from items. So this one I'm going to use to loop, and that's the same with the save loop. So I'm getting the index 0 from the loaded. Let me try and open this and just play this. Let's just play this, and you're going to see this is going to be 11, and it might get errors, possibly, if I would let's go open. As you could see, so this is not empty, and now we have here all null items, and then it's set to item 10, this first block, and here it's item 0, so this would give problems. So that's why you need to make sure they all are on 0 with a pre-filled count. And now let's play this. And I will put a breakpoint here so you can see. I don't know what I've loaded now, but let's put a breakpoint. So you can just right click and set a breakpoint. And what will happen now if I press load? So it goes here, and when it hits the breakpoint, it's gonna pause the game. And then when I start again, it's gonna continue. And if I have a breakpoint again, it's gonna pause again. So now I started and it set the first item. Let me see. So I have only 3 items loaded, so or saved. So as you could see here, it's adding this item here, and it's just getting the positions and the color and the object ID, but I will show you in a minute. So and as you could see, yeah, you just saw the indicator quickly, but let me try to put some more objects and more colors. Okay, save, clear, load, and now as you can see, it sets each object here, and then it's going to make this list, and the count, in the end, the count should be the same as the content here. Yeah, now it's done. As you can see, we have here 10 items, so starting from 0 to 9, and here also. So let's show you what I do here. So I'm getting the position, so I have already the position, so I don't need to get that again. So I'm storing this in the in this current position, so with a vector 3, and I'm also storing the index, so to know on which index I need to look. Then I'm getting here some info, so I'm getting the rotation, then I'm getting the color, and I'm also getting the object ID. So I'm getting the color string, not the color itself. Then I have the object ID, and then I use this string switch, and this switch. So I'm gonna have this string name, and then I'm gonna check here. I'm gonna compare the string with these. So if the string is blue, then I know it's blue, and then it's gonna set this value here, and then I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna spawn this pool object. So I got this here, so the object ID is gonna be this the name from this object 1 or block 1 or block 2 clone, and then I know for the pooler I know which object it's gonna be, so block 1 or block 2, and then it's gonna spawn this in the position that I also got here from this info from the array list get. So I got this let me see. So the position I got here. So I stored this current position, and let me see, current position, and the same for the rotation. So I got the rotation here, current rotation. Then I have the current rotation here, and then I'm gonna store this object to the current object. Then I get the child again, so I'm getting the mesh, so the block name. So again, important, this should be always the same name for this mesh. Then I'm gonna set the material, depending of course if you want colors or not. If you don't need colors, then you can also skip this, of course, but maybe you even like that you could change colors, so that would be maybe an idea also. And then I'm gonna add this object that I created. I'm gonna add in the object list. So as you could see, it was adding them until all the positions amount, so all them in those that were in the list are looped. Then it's also added into this object. So, and that's here, so the reference objects, so this is objects, then the game object, and that's the current object. As I spawned this here, I stored the object here into current object, and then place this in the array. Then this is looping until everything is done, and then it's finished. Then I can load or save again. I think I got everything now, and it's a little bit of a long video. I hope you understand what I'm doing here. I'm gonna make a proper tutorial, and I'm gonna also have this sample into my asset on the asset store. So, but it's not gonna be this week, so I'm sorry for that. But I hope this helped you out, and thank you for watching. Bye bye.